So Winsor and Newton are running a marker competition, and they asked me to do a couple of promotional drawings for it. So for the competition, what they did was create a template, and they used the famous Griffin logo for Winsor and Newton, and then they erased most of the lines and just left you with some of the lines. There you go, you can see them there. And then you had to create a drawing using just those lines, and then colour it using a Promarker or brush marker. So I came up with 4 rough designs for them, and they asked me to colour up and do properly 2 of those designs. So this is the first one. It's one I'm calling Mystic Desert. And so I used the template of the leftover lines from the Griffin logo and then created this drawing, which is supposed to be some kind of city, tower, palace in a desert kind of landscape. So I just used the brush markers and pro markers that I had to try and colour this in. So after drawing it out with the fine line pens, I'm just putting in base colours. So you can see that the desert, I'm using kind of colours like gold and soft peach. And for the sky, I'm using a sky blue that I've layered up a little bit extra at the moment, and cool aqua as well. So I'm trying to colour it from the bottom upwards, which is different. Usually I'd colour dark from the top of the sky and work my way down. And then when it came to do the actual palace, I decided to do it all kinds of green. So I have greens and I've got the orangey yellows of the desert. So I've got 2 complementary colours going on there. And obviously looking at doing a green city in the middle of nowhere, it looks as though it's heavily influenced by something like, say, the Emerald City from Wizard of Oz. I'm not an enormous fan of that movie, but I'm sure I must have been channeling a little bit of that when I did this. Probably a little bit of Krypton as well, Planet Krypton from the original Superman movie from 1978 or so. There's definitely a bit of that in the kind of angular, sharp kind of buildings that I've created here. And possibly also a little bit of maybe Elsa's Ice Palace from Frozen. I definitely think if I'd done it in shades of sort of like blues, whites and pinks, it would have had a little flavour of that going on. The greens that I used to do this were meadow green, lime green for that lovely yellowy bright green. Then I think it was turquoise and lush green. So I had a good range of greens that was going to give me a sort of a yellowy kind of green, you know, bright, nice bright green kind of finish to the sort of I'll call it the Emerald City. And for the sand, what I didn't want to do was do loads of little dots, because it'd be so time consuming. So I thought what I'd do is make it almost like kind of sand dunes, but also wispy, kind of like smoke or fog or mist in the desert. Possibly even a sandstorm. So I decided to do kind of almost Art Nouveau type swirly kind of lines and spirals. And I thought what I'd do in the middle ground is do them kind of lighter, getting a little bit darker, and then for the middle ground, the bit that's kind of in front of the Emerald City, I would do those darker colours. So I was looking at sort of kind of peachy, pinky, red kind of colours here to try and do all of these swirls with. I think anytime you do a landscape and you make parts of it look very, very decorative, I think you're immediately evoking people's thoughts on, say, Klimt or Art Nouveau type stuff, and I think there's a definite bit of that going on. I also think there's a bit of artist called Hunter Vasa, I hope I pronounced that correctly. I think there's a little bit of that going on as well in those kind of swirls that you would see in the landscape. Once I've done pretty much the colours that I wanted, just gave it a simple black outline using the brush pen, so it's an undulating line, it's not the same thickness. And it was kind of decided that some of those lines were too light and the sky was too light, so I was asked to go back into it and work into it a little bit more. So I was absolutely fine with that, and one of the requests was to make the blue sky a little bit more blue and a little bit more gradation of tone from dark to light. So I went in there with sky blue, but added some, you know, darker blues, French navy and stuff in order to get that gradation. And then also so that the swirls would show up better, and reproduce better, I was asked to make them a bit darker or brighter so that they pop. So what I did was I added shadow. Something I'd done in one of my prep sketches for this. I'd put shadow underneath the swirl, so it looked almost as though they were in relief and were raised slightly off the sand. So I went in and I darkened some of the lines that I'd done, and also tried to add shadow to every single one, usually using, I think it was purples for the foreground reds, and then maybe some browns and oranges and very pale reds for the middle ground, the bit you can see me working on right now. So I think there's a bit of lipstick red going on there, and then I use I think coral and even terracotta to be the dark sort of outlines for the that middle section of those swirls. In hindsight, I think it was a really good idea to add that extra colour, darken those colours, even though I was trying to give it the kind of the idea of depth, and so I wanted the middle ground to appear lighter at first, so it would recede more, so you get a feeling of depth in the picture more. I do agree that I think the lines that I did originally were too light. So I was absolutely fine, and like I said, in hindsight looking at it, I'm glad actually that I was asked to go over them and make them a bit darker, because they do stand out more, and I think the picture has a lot more impact for both darkening the lines and adding the sort of shadow areas on the underside, the underneath of those lines too. So with the picture pretty much finished with the last few bits of lines going on, hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to put the links below so that you can also have a look at what this competition that they're running is all about and have a go at it yourself, see what you come up with. That'd be brilliant. And if you like what you've seen on this video, then please check out some of my others, and don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share. Thanks very much for watching. And here's just a little sneak peek at the prep sketch that I did before I did the main one. And you can see that there's some different things in this, like the moon, for instance, is a big thing that I didn't decide to use, and some of the lines are a bit thicker.